forced to marry the blind Alpha King to save her little brother. The Omega discovered that he was. The village lay quiet under the soft glow of the early morning sun, its cottages huddled close, like birds seeking warmth. In one small home, near the edge of the forest, a girl moved swiftly, her hands trembling as she prepared herbs for her younger brother. His cough had grown worse overnight, each rasping breath a cruel reminder of the sickness that no healer had yet cured. She pressed a cool cloth to his fevered forehead, her chest tightening with fear and helplessness.
"Don't worry, little one," she whispered, brushing his damp hair from his face.
"I'll find a way to make this right."
Her name was Alara. Though young, she carried herself with a quiet strength.
Her village knew her for her kindness and her courage, but no one understood the burden she bore alone. Her mother had passed when she was a child, and her father had left to fight in distant lands, never to return. Her brother, Rowan, was all she had left, and his life was slipping away like sand through her fingers. That very morning, a group of horsemen appeared at the edge of the village, their armor glinting under the rising sun. The villagers paused in fear. Few dared approach strangers who came from the king's lands. But Alara felt a strange pull, a mixture of dread and inevitability, as the horsemen dismounted and strode toward her cottage. The tallest among them carried a message sealed with the mark of the kingdom, a silver crown entwined with thorns. He handed it to her silently, eyes stern beneath the shadow of his helmet. Alara broke the seal with trembling hands of Eldoria. "You are summoned to the capital, Eldoria. You are summoned to the capital. Your presence is required to fulfill a binding oath that concerns your family. Failure to comply may result in consequences." The words made her stomach turn. The blind Alpha King was a figure spoken of in hushed tones across the lands, a ruler as feared as he was revered. Stories told of his power and cunning, of how he could command loyalty and fear alike, even without the gift of sight. And now she was called to him. Panic surged, but fear was no match for love. Rowan's cough echoed in her mind, sharp and cruel. "I'll do it," she whispered. "I'll do anything to save him." By nightfall, she was led away on horseback, her small satchel clutched tightly. The road to the capital wound through forests of towering trees, their branches knotted like ancient hands. Shadows danced across the path, and Alara's mind raced with questions. What would the king demand of her? Why her? And what would become of her brother if she failed? When they arrived at the palace, the air changed. The gates rose like giants, carved with images of wolves and lions entwined in eternal struggle. Torches flared along the walls, casting golden light against the gray stone. The guards escorted her through long corridors lined with tapestries that whispered of victories and tragedies long past. At last, she stood before a massive door, behind which waited the blind Alpha King. She could feel his presence before she saw him. A gravity, a quiet strength that pulled at her heart and unbalanced her thoughts. The door opened and she stepped inside, her heart hammering. The room was dim, lit by candles that flickered against walls carved from black marble. The air was thick with the scent of incense and old wood. And then she heard him. "Come forward," a deep voice commanded, calm and precise. Though she could not see him, every word carried weight, as if each syllable were a stone laid upon her chest. "Do not fear. I can sense your thoughts already." Alara froze. The voice was neither cruel nor kind, but it held a power that made her feel exposed. It was impossible to hide anything from him. She stepped forward cautiously. "My name is Alara," she said, her voice shaking. I've come because my brother." Her words faltered as she looked around, trying to find his eyes in the shadows. He tilted his head slightly. "I know why you are here. Your love for him brought you. That is a rare thing." most would flee or bargain.
You do not!
The words, though calm, felt like a mirror held to her heart. How could he know? "You are to marry me," he continued, his tone final, leaving no room for negotiation. "The bond will fulfill the prophecy."
Your brother's life depends on it. Alara's mind swirled.
Marry him? This man, feared across kingdoms? Pierre gnawed at her, yet beneath it, a spark of something else flickered. Curiosity, defiance, and a strange sense of destiny. "Why me?" she asked, her voice trembling but steady enough to hold defiance. "Why not someone else?"
The king's lips curved slightly, though she could not see it. "Because only one who loves as fiercely as you can balance the darkness I carry."
Only someone who chooses to enter the storm willingly can survive what comes next.
The words chilled her and warmed her all at once.
The storm he spoke of. She did not understand, but she felt its pull. By leaving her village. In the days that followed, Elara was taught the customs of the palace, the rituals she would be expected to perform as the king's bride, and the delicate dance of power in the court. She met nobles whose eyes were sharp, measuring her worth, and servants whose whispers carried rumors of curses and betrayal. Yet the king remained distant, observing her from the shadows of his chamber, silent yet aware. Despite his blindness, he seemed to know every step she took, every breath she drew. When she practiced the formal greetings and bows, she felt him watch, not judging but sensing, as if he could see the truth beneath her outward actions. One evening she found herself in the royal gardens, the night sky above a tapestry of stars. The scent of jasmine hung in the air, and the soft murmur of fountains created a rhythm that steadied her racing heart. "Do you enjoy the garden?" His voice broke the silence, gentle yet commanding. Elara startled but replied honestly, "Yes. It is beautiful, though I never imagined a place like this existed."
Beauty is often hidden in plain sight, he said. One must learn to sense it, not merely see it.
She looked around, realizing that though the garden was exquisite, she had never noticed the way shadows played with the moonlight or the delicate hum of night insects. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps there was more to life than what the eyes could behold. Days turned into weeks, and a fragile rhythm grew between them. The king's presence, once terrifying, became a constant she could rely on. He never touched her without purpose, yet every gesture carried weight. Spoke little of himself, but his rare revelations left her breathless. Stories of a kingdom once whole, of battles lost, and a curse that took more than sight. Elara realized she was learning him slowly, like deciphering an unreadable language. And in return, he learned her too, sensing her fears, her hopes, and the fierce love that had led her to the palace. One night she overheard whispers of a prophecy in the servants' quarters. It spoke of a union that would either save or doom the kingdom, a bond that carried the power to challenge darkness itself. Her heart clenched. Every decision she made now, every word she spoke to the king, was tied to not just her brother's life, but the fate of countless souls. Fear and longing twisted inside her, a knot that tightened with every heartbeat. She was no longer just a girl trying to save her brother. She was part of something far greater, something dangerous, something powerful. And yet, she could not ignore the pull she felt toward the man she was meant to marry, a man whose blindness hid more than his eyes, and whose heart carried storms she could not yet weather. The night before her official marriage, she stood at the edge of the palace balcony, the wind tugging at her hair and her courage. The city below was alive with lights, unaware of the darkness that hung over the royal halls. A voice whispered behind her, soft and deliberate. "Do not fear what you cannot see. Fear only what you do not understand." She turned, startled, and there he was, closer than she had expected. She could not see his eyes, yet she felt them upon her, piercing yet gentle. In that moment something shifted. The man she feared, the king she was to wed, was no longer a figure of dread. He was something more, something human, something broken. And as the moonlight painted silver upon his face, Elara realized that this binding oath was not just a marriage, not just a sacrifice. It was the beginning of a journey that would test everything she believed about love, courage, and destiny. The wind carried a chill, a promise of storms yet to come, and she knew, without doubt, that nothing would ever be the same again. To save her brother, she must marry the blind Alpha King. To survive the man himself, she must unravel the mysteries he kept hidden in the dark. And so the first night of the binding oath began, with shadows stretching long across the palace walls and a storm of hearts quietly gathering in the silent spaces between them. The first light of dawn spilled across the marble floors of the palace, but Elara hardly noticed. Sleep had been elusive, her thoughts tangled between fear, duty, and a curiosity she could not name. Today she would meet the court formally as the king's bride, a ceremony shrouded in ritual and whispers. The blind Alpha King, whose name the kingdom uttered with equal parts awe and fear. King Caelric had already risen. Elara had come to understand that he never needed to see the world as others did. He felt it, sensed it, and ruled it with a presence that made silence tremble. "Are you ready?" His voice called from the shadowed hallway, low and steady, carrying the weight of command and unspoken challenge. Elara swallowed and nodded, smoothing the front of her dress. She had spent nights learning the palace's strict etiquette, yet her heart still beat unevenly at the thought of standing before a court that would judge her every word and gesture. "You will not falter if you remember this," he said softly. "Approaching. They may look with eyes, but I see with truth. Baby, I am in, speak your heart and I will hear it. Fear only those who would harm you without reason." His words wrapped around her like a cloak. For the first time she felt the stirrings of courage, though it trembled like a candle in the wind. The procession through the grand hall was daunting. Nobles dressed in silks and velvet lined the walls, their eyes sharp as blades. Some whispered, some sneered, and some merely observed with careful neutrality. Elara held her head high, sensing Caelric beside her, a shadow of power that was both comforting and terrifying. "Remember," he whispered, brushing against her hand ever so slightly. "I am here. Trust yourself, and trust me." The ceremony passed in a blur of ritual bows, spoken vows, and the soft hum of music from unseen minstrels. Elara spoke clearly, her voice steady, though her heart raced. She noticed, as she had suspected, that Caelric did not merely walk beside her. He sensed every nuance, every tremor of her breath, every tightening of her fingers. In that way, he saw more than the eye ever could. Afterward, as the crowd dispersed, Elara lingered near a window overlooking the palace gardens. She felt the wind on her face and thought of Rowan, her little brother, who lay in their village unaware of the path she had taken. The thought of him gave her both strength and sorrow. "You think of him often." Startled, she turned. Caelric stood in the doorway, his posture calm, almost serene. Though his eyes were hidden, she felt their weight on her like sunlight and shadow combined.
"Yes," she admitted.
Desperation. "He is all I have left in the world. I could not bear to lose him." He approached slowly, careful not to crowd her. "Then you will understand," he said quietly, "that I too have losses. My blindness is not the only curse I carry. There are things I cannot protect no matter my strength. That is why I must rely on you, and why you must rely on me." Elara's heart caught. There was no vanity in his voice, only truth, and the raw honesty shook something loose inside her. For the first time, she sensed the man behind the mask of fear and legend. a man capable of tenderness, pain, and perhaps even longing. Days in the palace settled into a rhythm. Alara learned the subtleties of court life, the dangerous dance of loyalty and envy. Some nobles tested her, mocking her village origins. Others sought to manipulate her for their gain. Yet through it all, Kaelric remained a steady force, guiding her with subtle gestures, gentle words, and occasional challenges that tested her wits and resolve. One evening, curiosity led her to the palace library, a vast chamber lined with shelves that seemed to touch the heavens. Books of every kind whispered forgotten knowledge, spells, and prophecies. She wandered, fingertips brushing the leather-bound volumes, until a soft voice startled her.
You shouldn't be here. She spun, finding Kaelric emerging from the shadows.
Pie.
I was curious, she admitted, about the kingdom, about the history of the throne.
He stepped closer, silent, yet imposing.
Curiosity is not a crime, he said, but knowledge can be dangerous if it is not tempered with caution.
Come. He guided her to a secluded corner where an ancient tome lay open.
This, he said, contains truths most would rather forget. The curse on this kingdom is old, and it is cruel.
It takes from those it touches, but it also tests the hearts of the living. We are bound by it, and yet we can rise above it if we understand it. Alara listened, fascinated and wary. She had never imagined that the man she feared could also be a teacher, a guardian of secrets. Yet, in the way he spoke, she sensed that knowledge came at a cost. Their bond, their choices, and the lives entwined with them. Over the following days, the tension between them grew, charged with unspoken truths and the weight of necessity. She found herself noticing him more, the way he paused before a door, as if listening to its history, the way he could sense the smallest tremor of fear in a servant, the quiet strength that demanded respect. And though he could not see, she felt that he saw her entirely, her fears, her hopes, and the protective love she carried for her brother. One night a messenger arrived with news that sent ripples of dread through the palace. A faction of nobles sought to challenge the king's rule, claiming that his blindness made him unfit to lead. They whispered of curses, betrayal, and the possibility that the prophecy binding Alara to Kaelric would fail. Alara's pulse quickened. "They will stop at nothing," she whispered. "Perhaps," Kaelric said, his voice calm but edged with steel. "But we are stronger than they believe. And you have strength they cannot measure."
That is why this bond matters. Their conversations grew longer, deeper, moving beyond ritual and duty into realms neither had dared to explore.
By Stoke, they spoke of loss, fear, and hope. Kaelric told her of the battles he had fought, the friends lost, the betrayals endured. He admitted that his blindness had left him isolated, wary of the world. Yet he found in her presence a light he had not known in years. Alara, in turn, shared fragments of her life. Her mother's gentle voice, her father's absence, and the burden of caring for Rowan. Each revelation built a bridge between them, a connection forged not through sight or titles but through understanding and shared vulnerability. One evening, drawn by the moonlight, she wandered into the palace gardens once more. The fountains glimmered silver, and the air was sweet with night-blooming flowers. She heard footsteps behind her.
"You walk alone,"
he said, his voice blending with the whisper of the wind. Breaths. I needed to think," she admitted. I needed to think," she admitted. "You think of him." "Your brother." "Yes," she whispered. "Every moment." I would give anything to save him." He paused, close enough that she could feel his presence, commanding yet gentle. "Then you understand why we must trust each other," he said. "Prophecy. You are not merely a pawn in this prophecy. You are part of it."
Your choices matter as much as mine, perhaps more. That is why I need you, and why I must teach you to trust your own strength.
For a long moment, they stood in silence, the night wrapping around them like a protective cloak. Elara felt something stirring, a mix of awe, fear, and something tender she could not name. Piece by piece, not as a ruler to obey, but as a man who bore the weight of his kingdom, his curse, and perhaps, in a quiet way, a need for her. But peace was fleeting. A sudden rustle from the far edge of the garden snapped her to attention. Shadows moved unnaturally, whispering threats she could not see. Her hand went instinctively to her chest, her heart hammering. "They are here," Kelrick said quietly, sensing the danger before it reached them. "The ones who would challenge us." "Stay close." In an instant, the serene garden transformed into a battlefield of tension. They moved together, instinct and trust guiding them. The nobles and traitors who sought to disrupt their bond were clever, yet they underestimated the connection between the Omega and the King. Elara realized with a shock that she was not merely a passive participant. She was part of the defense, part of the strength that upheld the King and the prophecy. And in the heat of the moment she glimpsed something more, how the King's power was not just in his command or his sword, but in the way he trusted her, relied on her, and allowed her to be more than she had ever been before. When the danger passed and the traitors fled into the shadows, Elara stood breathless beside him. The garden was calm again, yet the tension lingered in the air. "Do you understand now?" he asked softly, his hand brushing against hers, the briefest touch that left her heart racing. "The storm is coming. Darkness is not yet gone. But together, we are stronger than they believe." Boshe Elara nodded, the truth of his words settling deep within her. She had come to the palace to save her brother, but she realized now that she had entered a world of shadows, power, and destiny far larger than her own fears. And in that world, the blind Alpha King was no longer merely a figure of dread. He was a force she could not ignore, and a heart she could not forget. And as the night deepened, the palace walls seemed to whisper secrets, prophecies, and warnings. Somewhere, beyond the sight of all, a darkness waited. But so did they, an Omega and a King, bound by fate, trust, and the quiet stirrings of something neither dared to name. And in the shadows, the kingdom held its breath. The sun had barely risen over Eldoria when a chill swept through the palace corridors, carrying the scent of smoke and unease. Elara awoke to a quiet tension she could feel in every corner, even before a servant arrived to knock on her door. Her stomach tightened. Something had shifted overnight, and the soft safety she had begun to find with King Kalik seemed fragile, like glass balanced on a ledge. She hurried down the long corridors, her footsteps echoing against the marble floors. The throne room doors were open, and there he stood, Kaelric, the blind Alpha King, his posture rigid, his face unreadable even to the untrained eye. But Elara could sense it. A storm within him. Something dangerous. Something that reached beyond his usual controlled composure. "What has happened?" she asked, keeping her voice calm though her heart raced. "The northern borders have been attacked," he said quietly. "Desk. A rebellion and worse. The traitors who threatened us in the gardens have allied themselves with outsiders. They seek the prophecy and will stop at nothing." His words, though soft, carried the weight of impending doom. Pain.
Elara's chest tightened. This was no longer a test of etiquette or courage. It was survival.
She thought of Rowan, safe in their village, and feared for his life as well as their kingdom. "What can I do?" she asked. "Tell me. I will do anything."
Kaelric studied her silently for a moment, as though measuring her resolve.
Then he said, "You must trust me. We move at night. There is no time for hesitation. That evening, under the cloak of darkness, they left the palace. The wind whipped at Alara's hair and the hem of her cloak as they traversed the forests beyond the castle walls. Ceolric led without hesitation, relying on the knowledge of the land that seemed etched into his memory, as though every root, every stone, whispered directions only he could hear. The journey was tense, every shadow a potential threat. Alara's hand brushed against the hilt of the dagger at her side, but she felt powerless compared to the calm strength of the king. She wanted to speak, to share her fears, but the weight of the night and the danger that lurked silenced her. After hours, they arrived at a cliff overlooking the northern valley. Fires burned in the distance, marking the rebels' camp. The wind carried smoke and the distant clatter of armor. Ceolric's presence beside her was a steady anchor, yet she felt the tremor in his hands as he rested one on the stone railing. "They have underestimated us," he said, "but this is only the beginning. I need you to remain here." "What? No. I will fight with you. I cannot stand by while they threaten our kingdom." His voice was calm but firm. "This is not a duel of swords alone. It is a test of endurance, of spirit."
You must stay alive.
"Oh, your role is not to strike, but to ensure the future, the prophecy. You're stronger than you realize, but your place is here, not in the fray." Dissonantiere.
She wanted to argue, but there was an unspoken truth in his words. The weight of their bond, the danger she could not yet comprehend, pressed down upon her.
With a heavy heart, she nodded. Hours passed like centuries as she waited in the shadows, listening to the distant echoes of battle. The wind carried screams, the clash of steel, and the cries of those who could not escape. Her hands shook, and she pressed them together, praying silently for Ceolric's safety. When he returned, his cloak dark with mud and sweat, she ran to him. Are you hurt?" she asked, voice trembling. "Death." He shook his head, though his eyes remained hidden behind the darkness of his blindfold. "No." They were strong, but not clever enough.
The prophecy is intact.
"The rebellion will fall." Alara exhaled, relief flooding her body, but she sensed the change in him. Something in the king had shifted, not physically, but in the quiet storm that simmered beneath his calm exterior. She reached for his hand. For a moment they simply stood, the weight of the world between them. Days turned into weeks, and the aftermath of the rebellion left the palace tense and suspicious. Allies were few, and enemies lurked in every shadow. Alara felt the strain of her role pressing down on her, her responsibilities for her brother, the palace, and the king himself intertwined into a complicated web of fear, loyalty, and longing. One evening, while exploring a part of the castle she had not yet seen, she stumbled upon a room filled with relics and old scrolls. The walls were lined with mirrors, yet she could not see the reflection of the king, though she could sense his presence. "You shouldn't be here," Ceolric's voice warned, calm but carrying an edge she had not heard before.
I was curious, she admitted.
"I wanted to understand the history of this place, of you, of the prophecy." He stepped closer. "Some truths are not meant for all eyes," he said. "But you may need to know, sooner than later."
Listen carefully. He told her of the curse that haunted Eldoria.
Long ago, a ruler had sought power over all, but the gods had punished the kingdom with a shadow that would blind its leader and test the hearts of those bound to him. The king's blindness was only part of the curse. It had stripped away trust, joy, and the ability to rely on others. Those who came close risked heartbreak or betrayal. Alara listened, heart pounding. The weight of their bond suddenly seemed heavier, more fragile. Then that her feelings, the growing care she felt for him, were dangerous, not just for her heart, but for her very life and the prophecy itself. Days later, a messenger brought news from her village. Rowan had fallen ill again, worse than before. Elara's heart sank, tears brimming, desperation.
She rushed to the king. They are weak, she cried.
My brother, he may not survive if I don't return. Calric's hand found hers, steadying her panic. Your bond to him is strong, he said softly, but leaving now could endanger more than one life. The prophecy! The rebellion! Tss. Everything hangs in the balance. You must trust me. Trust that I will protect him as you would.
The truth in his voice, the quiet strength behind the words, silenced her fears momentarily.
Yet doubt lingered. Could she save Rowan without abandoning her duty? Could she trust a king who had always been distant, whose secrets were deep and dark? The night she made her decision to stay, the castle was attacked again. Shadows moved like whispers in the corridors, figures cloaked and silent. Alara and Calric fought side by side, their bond tested not just by enemy swords, but by the weight of fear, trust, and unspoken desire. In the chaos, she realized something terrifying. She could not see the danger, but he could sense it. He moved with precision, guiding her through threats, protecting her as fiercely as she had always wished to protect Rowan. Every time she faltered, he was there. Not just a king, but a man whose care for her had become a quiet, undeniable force. The attack ended, but the aftermath left scars deeper than she expected. One of the traitors, cornered, spoke words that struck her like a dagger. "You are nothing but a pawn," he sneered. He cannot love you. He cannot see you as you truly are. All this is a game. Elara's hands trembled, her chest tight. Could it be true? Could the king, whose presence now haunted her thoughts, feel anything beyond duty? Later, as she sat in the garden, staring at the moonlit fountains, Calric approached silently. He did not touch her, only stood near, his presence a shield against the dark. Breaths built up in his lungs. "You doubt me," he said quietly. I don't know what to think anymore, she admitted, voice breaking. I care for you, but
what if it is only my fear and my duty that make me feel this way?
He was silent for a long moment, and then he spoke with a weight that made her heart leap and ache all at once. Fear and duty often lead to the strongest bonds, he said softly.
Prison. You are not my prisoner, Alara. But neither are you merely a pawn. You are part of this kingdom, part of this prophecy, and part of me. If you cannot trust that, then we are lost before the storm truly arrives. Her heart pounded, torn between longing and fear, trust and uncertainty. She wanted to reach for him, to bridge the space between them. But the memory of her brother's life, the danger that still lingered, and the curse that shadowed him, held her back. And as they stood in the silver glow of the moon, the night air thick with the scent of jasmine and smoke, a new threat emerged, one more insidious than the rebels, more cunning than any enemy they had faced. A whisper in the shadows hinted at betrayal from within the palace itself, someone close enough to strike without warning. Alara shivered, realizing that the storm was far from over. And for the first time, she wondered not if she would survive, but whether the bond she had begun to trust could withstand the darkness yet to come.
The king's hand brushed hers, again so faint she could have imagined it, but the certainty in his presence anchored her.
And still, the shadows deepened, carrying whispers of danger, prophecy, and the heartbreak that seemed inevitable when love and duty collided. The night held its breath, and so did Alara. The Omega had begun to discover not only the king's heart, but the true depth of the darkness she had stepped into. And the storm that would test them both was only just beginning. The sky over Eldoria was heavy with storm clouds, a gray curtain that seemed to mirror the tension in the palace. The winds howled along the ramparts, carrying the scent of rain and smoke. Alara stood at the edge of the balcony, her cloak clutched tightly, heart hammering. The betrayal from within the palace had come to light. A trusted noble had aligned with outsiders, seeking the prophecy's power for their own gain. But the storm outside was nothing compared to the tempest within her. She thought of Rowan, her brother, now recovering but still weak. She thought of Kaelric, the blind Alpha King, whose secrets, fears, and pain had become a weight she carried as well. Everything she had endured, the danger, the uncertainty, the growing bond between them had led to this moment. The time has come, Kaelric said, his voice calm but commanding. He appeared from the shadows, footsteps silent, a presence both steady and magnetic. We face this together. No one else can challenge us. Gaddow! Not now! Alara nodded, though her stomach quivered. The prophecy, the curse, and the betrayal had led to this. The fate of the kingdom, the lives of those she loved, and even the fragile trust between her and Kaelric depended on what they did next. Together they moved through the corridors, passing rooms illuminated by flickering torches. Guards and allies had gathered, forming a quiet shield around them, yet Alara could sense the tension lingering in every shadow. Kaelric's hand brushed hers once, a subtle reassurance. It was enough. They entered the throne room, where the traitor waited, flanked by hired soldiers. The noble sneered, confident that even the Alpha King's blindness would leave him vulnerable. But he underestimated the bond between the Omega and the King. The trust, the courage, and the quiet strength they had forged in the shadows. "Step forward," Kaelric commanded. Though he could not see, every movement of the enemy was clear to him. His other senses, sharpened by years of reliance on intuition and skill, guided him with precision. You will not harm this kingdom, nor those who dwell within it.
Alara stood beside him, her hands steady, her heart aligned with his. She realized something vital. The prophecy had never been about power or fear.
It was about trust, courage, and the unity of hearts willing to defy darkness. Her role, her presence, mattered just as much as Kaelric's strength. Battle that followed was swift and tense. Soldiers clashed, but the King and the Omega moved as one, his strategic commands paired with her keen instincts and determination. For every move they made, every step and strike, their bond was revealed, their synergy undeniable.
It was not brute force that won the day, but connection, trust, and unwavering resolve.
When the traitor finally fell to his knees, defeated but alive, Kaelric stepped forward, voice carrying authority tempered with mercy.
Your schemes have failed, he said.
The kingdom is stronger than your greed. Leave and never return. Alara exhaled, her shoulders relaxing for the first time in days. The danger had passed, but the storm within her remained. She turned to him, searching for a glimpse of what lay beyond the stoic mask he often wore. You fought well, she said softly. I didn't think I could, but you guided me. You trusted me. Kaelric's hand found hers, this time holding it firmly. And you trusted me, he said. That is what matters. Fear and doubt have their place, but courage comes when we step beyond them. For a long moment they simply stood together, the weight of the night, the rebellion, and the prophecy lifting slightly. The storm outside had begun to ease, the wind softening, and a hint of moonlight breaking through the clouds. Then, in the quiet aftermath, The true test began. The curse that had long haunted Eldoria, the darkness that had bound the Alpha King, isolating him in fear and pain, stirred one final time. Kaelric's body tensed, the familiar ache of the ancient magic returning. Eolara's heart clenched as she reached for him. "You are not alone," she whispered, stepping closer.
You don't have to bear it all by yourself. He shook his head slightly, though she felt the tremor of emotion in him.
This is mine to face, he said. Trees. I have carried it for years, hidden it behind power and control. But perhaps it is time.
Guided by instinct, courage, and the bond they had built, Elara followed him to the highest tower of the castle, where the storm's power converged. Ancient runes glimmered faintly along the walls, remnants of magic older than the kingdom itself. The curse pulsed here, tangible and suffocating, testing their hearts, their loyalty, and their willingness to endure pain for the sake of others. This This is it, she asked, voice trembling.
Yes, Kelric said.
The darkness can be broken only by sacrifice, not of life, but of fear. We must face what we dread most, our own shadows, our own weaknesses. Together they stepped into the center of the tower, the runes glowing brighter with each heartbeat. Kaelric's senses were alive. He could feel the magic pressing against him, but he did not falter. And neither did Elara. She reached for him, and their hands joined, their courage intertwining. The curse tested them, showing visions of doubt and despair. Elara saw Rowan fall again, the kingdom consumed by darkness, and Kaelric alone and lost. She felt her knees weaken, but his grip was unwavering. "Do not let it consume you," he said, voice steady, grounding her. "Together! Boop! Always together!" With that, they focused on the bond they shared, their trust, and the love that had grown quietly, like a seed nurtured in darkness. The runes pulsed faster, brighter, until a wave of light surged outward, filling the tower, spreading through the castle, and reaching the kingdom beyond. When it ended, silence fell. The storm outside had calmed completely, leaving a night sky full of stars, brilliant and clear. Elara and Kaelric stood in the center of the tower, exhausted but alive. Pain. She looked at him, truly looked, and for the first time saw him. Not just the blind Alpha King, but the man beneath, strong, wounded, and capable of feeling deeply. "Over?" she asked, voice soft.
Yes, he said.
"The curse, it has been lifted. Not entirely, perhaps, but enough. I can see, not with my eyes, but with my heart. And that is more than I have had in years." Tears filled her eyes. Relief, joy, and something tender she had long suppressed surged through her. You
survived, she whispered.
And so did you, he replied, a small smile breaking across his face.
You have proven your courage, your loyalty, and your heart.
I underestimated you, Elara.
You are more than I ever imagined. For a long moment, they simply held each other, the weight of past fears dissolving into the quiet comfort of shared triumph. Outside, the kingdom breathed in the calm, the night peaceful for the first time in ages. But their story was not only about survival, Dabask. It was about transformation. Kaelric, once bound by fear and isolation, had learned to trust and to love. Too, Elara, once driven solely by duty, had discovered strength within herself she had never known. Together, they had faced darkness, betrayal, and destiny, and emerged not unscathed, but stronger, united, and changed. The days that followed were quiet, but filled with gentle moments of growth. Elara returned briefly to her village to care for Rowan, whose recovery was now steady and assured. Calric accompanied her in spirit, sending loyal guards and messages to ensure her family's safety. Their bond, though stretched by distance, remained unbroken. When she returned to the palace, the king awaited her on the balcony, the sun rising behind him, casting a golden glow. She approached, heart pounding, knowing that their journey together was just beginning, not because prophecy demanded it, but because they chose each other. "You have returned," he said softly. "I have," she replied, "and I will not leave again." He stepped closer, hand reaching for hers, and for the first time she felt no fear, only certainty, trust, and the quiet bloom of love that had grown through trials, darkness, and sacrifice.
"There is still much to do," he said.
"The kingdom must heal, and so must we. But together we can face whatever comes." Elara smiled, feeling the weight of the past, lifting, replaced by hope. "Together," she agreed. And as the sun broke fully over Eldoria, spilling golden light across the palace and the city beyond, they stood side by side, Omega and Alpha, bound by love, trust, and the promise of a future forged in courage and sacrifice. Somewhere, in the quiet corners of the kingdom, the shadows of the curse lingered, a reminder that darkness could return. But now it would never touch them as it once had, for they had faced it together, survived it together, and discovered that the greatest power lay not in prophecy or magic, but in hearts willing to trust, to endure, and to love. And in the stillness of that dawn, a kingdom breathed again, and two hearts beat as one.